In the meantime, also tonight, there are growing concerns over a possible nuclear deal with Iran. Some Republicans, Democrats, and even Mideast allies are worried that this agreement being worked on could allow Tehran to eventually build a nuclear bomb. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry filed this report for us from the White House.
Good evening, Martha. After a closed-door meeting with the Emir of Qatar today, President Obama offered an update on these talks with Iran that might not reassure Arab or Israeli allies. The president saying the goal of these talks is to verify that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon now, when in fact the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his goal is to dismantle Iran's nuclear program altogether, make sure they can't get weapons. Secretary of State John Kerry, though, is edging towards a deal with Tehran that would freeze its nuclear activities for as little as 10 years. Kerry today on Capitol Hill pushed back against the critics by saying there's no final deal yet, while Republican Lindsey Graham said a weak deal will only embolden Iran.
Is Iran will not get a nuclear weapon. And anybody running around right now jumping in to say, well, we don't like the deal or this or that, doesn't know what the deal is.
We're dealing with the people who are hell-bent on expanding their influence in the Mideast in a destructive fashion.
Meanwhile, Netanyahu declared today he will do everything to prevent any nuclear deal at all when he addresses Congress here in Washington next Tuesday. Remember, that's the speech that Vice President Biden and some congressional Democrats are planning to skip. They're frustrated that Speaker John Boehner politicized it by cutting the White House out of the invite. Martha?
Yeah. It's a showdown. Joining us now, Ambassador John Bolton, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and a Fox News contributor. But we begin with Colonel North, who recently returned from a trip to Israel and meetings with Israeli lawmakers and top government officials there who are none too happy about this deal. Colonel North, good to see you tonight. Welcome, and good to have you here. So, I mean, Netanyahu has said that basically he has to come to Congress, he believes. He's been invited because he thinks it's his best forum to make a case against this deal, which he thinks is pretty dangerous.
Well, he's right, because what the administration is saying, that they're doing a better job than the Bush administration, is laughable on its face. Look, this administration has made it clear that they're going to reshape the Middle East. In 2009, when they had a chance to support the Green Revolution that offered a prospect of real democratic transition in Tehran, the O team was mute when hundreds of thousands of Iranians took to the streets. Hillary Clinton, by the way, was Secretary of State, and she said nothing to encourage what might have been a change of direction. And so, since 2010, the Obama administration has been wedded to the idea of doing nothing that will upset the Shiite oligarchs running the nuclear program in Iran. Yeah. That's why we've done nothing since 2011. We bugged out of Iraq because of that. That's why we've done nothing to stop Assad in Damascus, nothing to stop the Iranian weapons from going to Hezbollah in Lebanon, nothing to stop Iranian weapons and rockets going to Hamas through Sudan. Right. That's why the North Koreans are backing the Iranians, because they know the Iranians are going to get their weapons.
Former CIA Director General Hayden this morning, and he said, you know, we've sort of played gently with Assad, played gently with Putin, so that we don't disrupt this apple cart and tick anybody off who is supportive of Iran because they want this deal so badly. And now you've got Saudi Arabia and the Emir of Qatar also looking at this arrangement with Iran. They're not happy about it either. So we've alienated Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar in order to cut some kind of deal with Iran that many people think may ultimately let them have weapons anyway, even though John Kerry says, I don't know what I'm talking about. He says nobody knows what's in this deal.
Here's the bottom line. In Israel, the words never again and never forget are not political slogans. They mean it. And that's why it's so important that Prime Minister Netanyahu deliver that message here in the United States, because the American people need to know this is not just an existential threat to Israel. It is ultimately an existential threat to us if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon.
All right. Well, the President and John Kerry say that will not happen under this deal, but a lot of people skeptical. Thank you very much, Colonel. Good to see you. So this past weekend, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu explained why he felt compelled to address the United States Congress next week. Here's that.
This agreement between Iran and the Western powers is dangerous for Israel. Therefore, I will leave next week for the United States to explain to the American Congress, since this is the body that influences the faith of the agreement, why the agreement is dangerous to Israel, dangerous to the region, dangerous to the whole world.
Here now is Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador, a lot of people in Washington very angry that he is still coming. Democrats very fired up. The president's not going to show up to see Benjamin Netanyahu speak. The vice president's not going to be there. But Dianne Feinstein and Dick Durbin, the senators, are going to have sort of an aside meeting with him in their offices. What's that about?
Well, ostensibly, they say it's to avoid politicizing the U.S.-Israel relationship. I think Netanyahu should meet with them in the caucus of Democratic senators. I think he should meet with anybody in Congress who'll meet with him after the joint session to meet privately to discuss this. I think he's got a very serious concern. Israel's a small country, half a dozen Iranian nuclear weapons. There won't be in Israel. This is what Prime Minister Ariel Sharon used to call the threat of a nuclear holocaust. It's why it was perfectly appropriate for Speaker Boehner to invite him, why the American people should listen to him.
All right. So, I mean, clearly the president and John Kerry believe what they're saying, that the deal that they are cutting will mean that Iran will never be able to have a nuclear weapon. So what are we getting in return for that deal? I mean, what kind of promises of inspections and what other kind of, larger deal for the Middle East, what would we be getting in giving them this?
Well, let me say first, the notion that Secretary Kerry just put out that we don't know what's in the deal is false. We don't know everything. That's true. But we know what the administration itself has leaked over the past year as a demonstration of their pride in what a great deal they're cutting. Look, I wouldn't trust the current government of Iran with any nuclear program at all. And, this is technically very complicated. But our fundamental mistake, the administration's fundamental mistake, was conceding that Iran had any right to a peaceful nuclear program to begin with. And certainly the notion that they're allowed to have any uranium enrichment capability is a sure guarantee. It's proof that they haven't given up the objective of getting deliverable nuclear weapons. All we're talking about here is how soon we're going to find out that Iran is violating the commitment it's made repeatedly not to go after nuclear weapons. And the verification provisions are inherently inadequate. The International Atomic Energy Agency has been stiffed by Iran going on 20 years. There's not going to be any provision for no-notice, anytime inspections. The fact is, a lot of what Iran is doing, they may not be doing in Iran. They may be doing it in North Korea. They may be doing it in Syria.
It was a secret facility that was reported underground just the other day. Ambassador Bolton, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you.